Hi everyone, welcome to the webinar. My name is Carolyn. I'm here with my colleague Chris, and we're going to be hosting the webinar today with media literacy just around the corner, actually from October 27th to October 31st. We're really excited to be partnering with Media Smarts. Our presenter today is Marc-Alexandre Ladouceur. He's actually a media education specialist with Media Smarts. And for those who don't know what Media Smarts is, it's a Canadian organization that creates free resources to help youth develop critical thinking skills for navigating the digital world safely and responsibly. But no one can speak their mission and work better than Marc-Alexandre himself. So with that, I'll hand the mic over to you.
Thank you. And with that, I think I'll share my screen and go right into who we are as an organization. So I figure I will break this down into two main parts. One, we are going to look at who Media Smarts is, and this is what the About presentation is all about. Then I would like to take us through a live navigation of the website. I think that our website is fantastic. We have so many resources and I mean, a gargantuan amount, truly, of content related to digital media literacy. And as such, it can sometimes be either a little intimidating or easy to say, I'll check it out later for those very reasons. Oh, I know it's good. I can check it out. And then when you need something quickly, it doesn't necessarily come as easily. So, with that in mind, we'll be able to just see what the quick search options are, what the subjects are, and how we can link everything immediately, not with any extra work, to existing curricula so that it is easier to use without any extra effort. A strict minimum, maybe some pre-reading. So with that, let's talk about who Media Smarts is. We are an organization that has been doing research on digital media, well, media literacy at first, more than 20 years ago, and as it kept going, we find that it's impossible to talk about digital media literacy without that digital aspect. That is to say, that all of our information, one way or another today, comes to us through the digital medium. Whether it is the information that we get through social media, whether it's how we stream information or videos, or how we understand things through the lens of AI and its own bias selection making, or whether it's picking up a print edition of, you know, anything. L'actualité, Journal de Montréal. I can't think of any of the English Montreal or Quebec publications. My apologies. But what we pick any of these, and all the research has been done online. All the information that's coming to us in traditional print format has gone through a digital lens first. So, with all of this information coming to us and causing, I would dare say, a whole new set of biases and needs for critical thinking skills to come up, we have to look into what is digital media literacy. In order to do this, we use what's called the research to resource model. We have many teams on our staff, though we are admittedly a small team total, who do qualitative research that will seek to understand the experiences of young Canadians experiencing online life. But that qualitative is actually supported by this massive quantitative research called Young Canadians in a Wireless World, that is also what we'll call longitudinal. So it's been going on for years and years, and it happens every 4 years, much like an election, but with far more consistent results. We have the material to understand the experiences of youth, and based on that, we can lead maybe focus groups or bibliographical resources in order, or researches, pardon me, to then develop into resources. Those resources are developed by the program team, who are all previous educators. Two of us were in the Ontario system, and we do diversify with our team. We find people from different school boards and backgrounds on the education side in order to make sure that our resources are pedagogically sound and we know how to attach them, therefore, to those curricula that I had mentioned. And then thanks to our wonderful communication team who understands that comms is more than just emails and newsletters and social media posts. It is an opportunity to teach. Then all of this material circulates both as an information dump for those who need it and as an opportunity to go through the highlights to better understand digital media literacy in bite-sized chunks that make it accessible and far more delectable before having to dive in deeply and create. We'll never have to create necessarily, but at least discover those lesson plans. So while we do work with youth very much in our research. At this point, it has become enormously diversified. Our funding comes through a huge amount of sources who might have different interests in who they want to bring digital media literacy to. We've worked with medical sources who wanted to know how do we address medical misinformation in the world. We've worked with teachers who want to know how do I bring this into my classroom. We've worked with women escaping situations of violence to know how to protect their digital identity, and ultimately, if they want to, how to tell their story in a safe way, because that is a very, I think, real and material concern related to digital media literacy. So while we've been technically around since 1994, the current incarnation of Media Smarts is we place around 20 years old. And one of the biggest things I think to have come from this incarnation is the house hippo or the return of the house hippo. Break the Fake, our resource that aims to, in 4 easy steps, teach people how to spot that's not the right word, pardon me, how to identify misinformation online by verifying it against its own sources or other sources, uses the house hippo as its mascot, champion, however you want to call it. It is the little critter that most of us might remember, at least anyone who's as old as I am, watching TV, and concerned parents, advertisers, and all of these groups would have these commercial spots where we were told things like, don't you put it in your mouth? I can reattach my arm, but you can't. And don't trust everything you see on TV. And that last one, the house hippo, represented it. And of course, with AI today, let's face it, that is probably far more important than it's ever been. And it's not just, of course, what we see on TV, because we live in a networked world now where we are no longer just receiving that information, we're sharing it. So we become just as responsible for the sharing of valuable versus misinformation as anybody else. And that can be a little bit mind blowing, and it can shake us if we aren't careful and turn us into information cynics. We don't want that. We want to be able to trust the information just the way that we want to be trusted to be information givers. We want to make sure that the what we are getting as data is valuable, and we want to know how to make sure that it is. Pardon me, my dog had to go. And given that this trust factor is so important on information, we ourselves, as an organization, have to be trustworthy. And we think that we can do that through integrity, through empowering. I jumped through that way too quickly. I know that people can read more quickly than I can speak, but maybe that was a little fast even for silent readers. And I will come back on intellectual humility a little bit later. I think that that is one of the most critical skills that we can have, because it goes hand in hand with that empowerment ability to look at the world of information and engage with it. We're not going to dismiss the whole thing, baby in bathwater, as either too much or lacking value because anything can be biased. We're going to become engaged content creators through our sharing, through our reading, through our ability to review these sources, and through that intellectual humility that I said I would come back to say, what is it that makes me want to believe something? What would it take for me to believe something else? And why is it that I want to believe that thing? We have a host of audiences, and most important for today's presentation webinar format is educators. We build all of these resources with educators in mind. I mentioned that our team were all teachers before coming over to Media Smarts, and that stays an important aspect of the resources identity for what we develop. while we have a whole bunch of material for parents that they can go through as tip sheets that I think are quite accessible, as a matter of fact. Digital contracts for the kids when offering a new device, what to do when it's time to upgrade the device, or how to connect to the internet, or when is the right time to give a smartphone that will suddenly connect our children to the whole world. All of these can be brought down into tip sheet format. The reason that I like the educational resources so much is that they bring teachers and youth step by step into the folds of media literacy as a way to understand the world, because that is the world we are connected to. Other than the immense amount of bragging that is present on this slide, I would like to say that it is true that nobody does in Canada what we do on the national scale. Our We are the only fully bilingual organization to do what we do. We are the only ones that do it with original research to original resources. There are, I will say, because I am speaking to a Quebecois crowd, something absolutely wonderful about how Quebec does a lot of localized programming. A lot of the partners that I've worked with in the region uh, develop incredible stuff, really. But, in Laval, in this sector of Montreal, just past Quebec on the North Shore. And while these are invaluable organizations for digital media literacy building skills, the idea of having a national network, at the very least, means that this can be brought to everybody who needs it. So, what is digital media literacy? We've touched on it a little bit, but here are the very fundamental aspects of it. And I really want to focus on that first one: the ability to critically, effectively, and responsibility access, use, understand, and engage with media of all kinds. If that looks like a definition made up of a whole bunch of hot words, it is, because all of these terms reflect the important basic skills and frameworks around digital media literacy that we have developed. So, critical thinking, effective skills, responsible access, so that we can use, understand, and engage. And that use, understand, engage is the essential format for all of our lessons. All of the key concepts I've mentioned for classic media can be found here. What does it mean to read media as a genre, if you will? So, media have commercial implications, audiences negotiate meaning, which is my personal favorite of all the media key concepts. Um, I mean, again, I could read through all of these, but all of you have probably gone through them in the time it's taken me to just address the two. That networked world means that though those media have their own concepts and implications, we have to put them in the context of the fact that the networks mean that they're unexpected audiences. So a joke, for example, can never be expected to just be a joke ever again online. Because that I think is actually something that was already true in classic literature concepts, actually. In the 60s, French author Paul Ricard might have written some of the best works on the subject when he talked about author intent, the work as its own phenomenon, and finally reader intent, and how these could be completely divorced or linked together as sources of meaning making. Well, with media, we get that constantly. And it's coming at us fast, and it's saturating our understanding of the world. So, we want to be able to talk about it in all sorts of different contexts and topics covered as per the title here. All of these are categories for our lessons and our material on the website. If I can highlight a few, I have become particularly fond of our body image section. I think it is well done. I think it addresses the issue without falling into some of the typical traps that we do hear from body image activists, such as telling people to love their bodies, but just exercise a little more. that's not, we've heard maybe from, I think Aubrey Gordon is an excellent example of how to avoid falling into that dialogical trap that would get us into the idea that there's an ethical issue with body image, when in reality, it's not an ethical one, it is simply an existential one. Our online hate section is incredibly well done. We have a whole presentation. I think the largest version of that presentation might be almost 2 hours long on how hate and radicalization happens online and what are the practical solutions that we can find in the classroom to countering hate and radicalization. So those are, I highlight. Again, these are my personal interests. This is where I found the presentations and the research to have been most fascinating, but there's all sorts of stuff for all sorts of facets. I've talked about our research already. I'll just jump over to the next slide to talk about that 4-year research recurring piece, which is the Young Canadians in a Wireless World, which means we're actually coming up on our next phase of this research that asks for a host of young people to answer a fairly large questionnaire on their experiences online, and we try to correlate that data into something that guides our meaning making in digital media literacy. And that guide is how we then eventually get to a lot of the interview research that allows reporting platforms to have come up. That was a great one where we asked youth how they felt about reporting misinformation online, and then they were able to tell us why it was not fun, effective, or useful for them to report misinformation when they're actually just going online to do what we're all doing when we're turning on social media, have fun. So the reporting tools are just the onus of responsibility on the people being targeted by misinformation. Well, it's kind of like a double whammy. And I thought that that was a great bit of insight into how we manage or perhaps mismanage tools against misinformation. Lot of interesting numbers, lots of fascinating data comes out of this research. Again, we have here a little bit of a wink. All of our research reports also have an infographic that goes along with them. So when I show you the research section on our website in a little bit, a super summary can be kind of found in those infographics. We don't just do lesson plans. We have a lot of tools that we've developed, games that students can play, videos that they can watch. There's no excuse section is really, really good. My Voice is Louder Than Hate took the concept from our research that youth know how to recognize hate online, but they don't feel like they know what to do about it, and gave practical, material examples of what to do when you encounter hate online. And it finishes with a meme maker to make sort of anti-hate memes and videos. There's a whole media production aspect to it that is fully integral to the tool, which means, again, nobody has to become an expert in video making or in meme making, as it's all in there. Everything we produce is free and accessible on the website. I think that is one of the most important parts that I can bring up is that as a nonprofit registered charity, it would do us truly no good to sell any of these resources. There would be ironically less to profit from because it would affect everything about how the organization is run. Instead, offering these resources for free means that we have the opportunity to share the results of the research and to spread it as widely as possible so that we can keep getting funding in order to develop more up-to-date resources and research all the time. I mentioned that Use, Understand, and Engage digital literacy framework for Canadian schools that is available directly as one of the links on the website. We'll see it soon. With that, I can keep going through the slides. I would be about halfway through, and I could talk about our online games and quizzes and a quick preview here. But of course, I'm also happy to share these slides if ever anybody wants to put them up so that somebody can see our resources in quick summary. What I think is most important is to remember that it's not just lesson plans, it's not just PowerPoint presentations. There are games, there are videos, there are integrated media making tools. There's, I believe, the entire framework for digital media literacy and how it can be broken down. You can search by subject. You can search by province or territory in order to get that information. All in all, and this is what I was saying, it's great, it's valuable. I'm personally super proud to be part of an organization that produces all of this, and it can be a lot. It can be a lot to navigate, it can be a lot to try to figure out. And it can feel a little heavy sometimes to say, well, what am I going to present in my classroom today? Do I have to become suddenly an expert in every kind of media that you guys are addressing in order to talk to the students about this? Obviously, if I'm asking this question, I'm leading into a no. I mean, I hope I'm not just discouraging people from watching the next part of this presentation webinar by doing so. Um, we don't have to be an expert in digital media literacy in order to teach digital media literacy. There is admittedly a gap that exists between what teachers know on the subject and what is being taught and what could be taught. But that's because there's no real gold standard for the subject or for the medium or for educators anywhere in Canada, as far as we know. This means that if I'm going to produce anything with the team, it has to be accessible to everybody. I cannot take for granted for a single second that somebody's going to know anything about the graphic composition of a comic book. I can't expect anyone to know how music and tone play an almost grammatical role in video production. All of this textual vocabulary might be completely alien to somebody who would just really, really like to do a stop motion video project with their students because that sounds fun. And you know what? It is. It's a whole lot of fun to do stop motion. It is probably one of the easiest ways. The tools that exist today can either do it constructively or retroactively. So you can either take your shot by shot scenes, and we do have instant expert videos available for that to learn how to do it with your students, or you can take a video and have it deconstructed into what looks to be a stop motion film because by removing frames, it gives us a feeling of stop motion, which makes sense because if you're going picture by picture or if you're going by video, it's all frame count. But again, how do we know this? Well, thankfully, that's where those experts come in. Now, I'm just going to move ahead my little bar here. This is the website. And Media Literacy Week is something that we're going to talk about at the end because it's coming. It's already less than 20 days away, and it's going to be great. There's so many resources. I was talking about that network earlier from organizations across Canada that are being shared, produced, and promoted this year for Media Literacy Week, and I think that people should be able to take advantage of them completely if they can. For educators, the teacher resources section sounds really good, and we will be going there. I'm opening it in a new tab now, but I'm actually going to go down to break the fake again because it'll take us there eventually. And the fun of that lesson. Break the fake, that house hippo. AI, probably the hottest questions about what that means in education right now are, I mean, absolutely not answered in this video because there is no answer to the question right now. We are in full development. There is no such thing as a longitudinal study on AI. The subject matter is completely emergent, so the best that we can do is talk about it, and that's what we're doing here. We are talking about AI because we don't want to dismiss it. I mentioned the baby in the bathwater metaphor or expression earlier. I really hope it's an expression and not a metaphor, uh, because it's easy to say If I don't get it, or if I'm worried about it, I'm going to toss it all out so that I don't have to deal with it. And that can work in a sort of nucleus classroom that it's maybe Faraday caged away from any signal where no information comes in, no technology is able to be accessed. Everything is done on pen and paper again. And hey, there's value in low tech. I love using low tech to teach some of these things. There's also value in high tech lessons teaching about high tech realities. And that's why I like to talk about House Hippo. It's because we've got both. With the House Hippo, we have access to the videos to express why it's important to check the information that we have online. 25 years ago. I'm terribly sorry. I have no idea if my audio is connected or not, but it's coming in through my speakers, which might create an audio back loop for everybody. So, if you're interested, please find the video on the web page so that I don't cause any audio issues. So, how do we tell if something is true online? This is the aspect of AI that we've decided to tackle with the House Hippo, with Break the Fake. There are a lot of issues, how to write a paper or how to make sure a paper hasn't been written by AI, how to learn about a subject before counting on AI to teach us how to do it so that we can find out if we are being taught properly or not, how to show your work so that we don't have to just count on a finished result. All of these are very important and easily enough used in the classroom as tools to work with, alongside, or against AI, depending on the optics we want to take. In the midst of all of this, however, students are still doing their research. They're still putting information down, and they can still be fooled by what they see online. And I don't know why I said students there, because teachers can just as easily. And that's kind of the point of this resource, is we cannot count on what we see to be enough information for us to discern whether something is created by AI or not. Our sight, even our critical reading skills, are just not sufficient because the technology is getting better. It's getting far more mimetic, which means that it's imitating what it's supposed to produce with more and more legit detail. And this means that the only thing we can do now is check it against its own sources or other sources. And that's all Break the Fake is about. There's a self-directed tutorial. There is an animal quiz that I think is delightful. So we're going to look at it, even though I had not necessarily planned on it, where we just want to see which animals here are real and which ones are made up. So is this turtle real or fake? I could ask everybody here, but taking a poll could take time. So let's say it's a 50-50 chance. I'll just say real. What is the answer? It is, but we'll also say where the photo comes from. That source information remains very valuable. Could I have been able to tell whether it was real or not just by looking at it? What was I thinking when I was looking at that photo that told me that this was real or not? Are there active squirrels in the area? Is this a real sign or a fake one? I'll go real again. We'll double down. Turns out that the sign is fake. Okay, so it was published by The Onion, which is satire, but away from its publication intention, we can't tell that anymore. And of course, is this squirrel real or fake? Now, looking at it, I'm like, oh, yeah, that can be touched up with technology. I'm pretty sure that there's no way that somebody spent hours dyeing a squirrel. That might actually count as animal cruelty, so I'm going to put it down as fake. And I will find out that, oh, no, it's real. So the Malabar giant squirrel doesn't actually have to be touched up in order to be colorful. So all of these expectations and these prejudices that we have about what we see can sometimes act in our favor, but well, they're only ever acting in our favor, not in favor of finding out what the information is. Because it is prejudice, prejudgment, it'll never be about what's out there, but it'll always be about us. So, what can we find in order to teach these digital media literacy skills to our students? Wonderfully, I hope the answer is everything. If I really need to find a lesson on a specific subject, I will. So, I've clicked on teacher resources. I've gone to the first link, which is find lessons in resources. and I get to my search tool. Now here I get to parse the information based on what I need. I talked about comics earlier, so I will just check off the comics box and I would put any other filters. And I'll get three results because we have a limited amount of lessons that deal specifically with comics. However, these lessons, characters, political cartoons, and secure comics, can all be taught at various grade levels. So, comic book characters is 5 to 7, where we're going to find out that they are built a certain way. We're going to understand how geometry actually affects the way that we perceive characters, the value of a circle versus a square versus a triangle in drawing a comic book character, how uh, gender rules become almost automatically associated to the most popular characters, how sometimes a character is so flat against its concept. So if I were to, for example, Google nighttime superhero, or ask AI to generate for me a nighttime superhero, the concept of Batman is so flat with it that I will not get a generic nighttime superhero. I'll probably get a Batman image. Then, of course, there's political cartoons for higher grade levels, 10 to 12, where we try to talk about the irreverence, bias, and satire that goes into these cartoons, and to understand the goal of a political cartoon in raising either awareness around a question and how the frame composition helps us get there. Finally, for the larger crowd, pardon me, 9 to 12 for all of secondaire, high school, we will have the Secure Comics lesson plan, which will go over the concept of cybersecurity as well as comics to blend both subjects into a significant final lesson plan. All of these are marked with their expected duration, their learning outcomes, and a PDF, so political cartoons, for example, that leads to the whole of the detailed lesson plans with its outcomes, necessary materials, and procedures. Anything that is anything outside of, for example, pencils, we will produce as annexes in these lesson plans as well so that they can be printed along with that material. Why do comics only start at grades 5? Well, that is because there is an ideal age in which inferential learning and comic geography becomes most relevant, and grades 4 or 5 tend to be that age. Before them, we might use what I was talking about earlier, stop motion animation, in order to get similar results, but for media literacy concepts that can be best understood by a young age. So if I go back and I say, okay, comics is fine, but I really need something for grade 2. I'm not sure what. I'd just like to start exploring. So I hit my grade 2 and I find the 41 results that come with it. And there are all sorts of concepts. So I have a strong preference for teaching about the frame. My favorite digital media literacy concept is, what is a frame? What do we see? What do we exclude? How do we frame? Colors, tone, sometimes literally the frame of a comic, sometimes or of a scene, sometimes exploding the frame by showing things moving from one to the other indiscriminately as if the frame didn't exist. Jodorowsky, I believe, was for the French artist who was the first to explore breaking the frame in a comic book by having a sort of center page image with every other scene drawn around it. All with the, there we go, all with the goal of understanding that there is something that we see and there is something that we don't see. We don't see the hours of production that go into making a single TikTok video by professional influencers. We don't see the lighting. We don't see the makeup. We don't see that they've received their product and are expected to talk about it, and that this is actually a form of advertising. I find that the frame is such an important concept, but it also bridges with so many other digital media literacy. Um, I don't want to repeat concept, but I'm going to do it anyways. Other digital literacy, media literacy concepts, that it just lends itself so naturally. So there's the whole lesson, and the lesson comes with, in this case, a what's in the frame slideshow. Oh shoot, that's right, it doesn't open. That oh well, that can be downloaded and used to teach the lesson integrally. Finally, going back to the teacher resources page, I can look up everything I need to know about the essences of using digital media literacy in the classroom. What I think might be most relevant is this third link right here. After finding the lessons and resources, digital and media literacy outcomes by province and territory. This will allow us to connect any of the outcomes and the expectations to the cycles in, well, obviously in this case, I chose Quebec to understand where the digital media literacy concepts connect so that you don't have to figure out how this lesson can be evaluated. All of the points are there for you. You just have to decide what the grade is. And really, I hope that, and I say I hope because it's always a matter of navigating, putting together, getting some of these core concepts under our belts. I completely understand. But I hope that with this functional pedagogical format, we find easy lessons, easily taught, and easily evaluated. Okay, I have gone on about this for a while now, and I'm sure that I could go and talk more and more. And I do really want to hit on Media Literacy Week at the end and about our teacher champions. But before getting into that, are there any questions or things that we're dying to say, or a hi mom that we want to pop onto the camera? Any concerns that we might have about the subject? So
Um,
far, so good.
Mark, I'll just ask, so the resources then really cover like as early as grade one all the way up until, I mean, Quebec we're grade 11.
Uh, that's
Like,
right. Secondaire 5.
right.
Absolutely.
Okay. And do you find that is there are there go-tos that you find that, I mean, I guess the hippo is always that really strong one. Um, what do you recommend for the older grades? Is that one that fits in the older grades? Because we're always trying to get teachers to talk a little bit more about media literacy, um, and trying to integrate it into what they already have to do, so they're not like, well, this is just an add-on. Um, could you recommend anything that you believe naturally fits into secondary education that could be not considered an add-on but a supplement to?
Absolutely. Okay. So we'll address the elephant or the hippo, I guess, in the room first. Yes, with media literacy being an emerging subject, sorry, digital media literacy. I know media literacy has been around for decades. It is possible that we get to the older grades and that we almost feel like we have to cover the stuff that we would have covered in second, third, or fourth grade, but with a different level of maturity and understanding. So, how do we tackle that so that we have the basic skills as well as the higher levels of critical understanding? I really, really strongly recommend the algorithm game. It is a low tech card game that we developed step by step with lessons. We've got rules for quick play, yes, but we actually have a full classroom version where we explain how the game works, um, which is narrated by our director of education, Matthew Johnson. And talking about how video streaming sites or any recommendation based service profits off of the time that we spend on those services, even though we don't pay for them. Understanding that means understanding concepts of advertising, means understanding concepts of geolocation, means understanding privacy concerns. All of this folded into a card game that is broken down into three parts. All in all, I think takes about 2 hours. I mean, we played it in 45 minutes, and it felt a little bit tight, but I think it can go all the way up to 4 hours, 2 hours, pardon me, and touches on a lot of these points. It might seem quick, but it's a lot about student discussion. They are the ones running the games themselves, so all the teacher has to do is triangulate during that time, take notes on the play, take notes on the conversation, asks some of the critical questions in between the game phases. The lesson plan, I think, well, I find is very complete. We spent a lot of time on this because we were actually quite fond of this game, and I think we were even nominated for an award for it. We didn't win. Um, it was an honor just to be nominated. And I think is unavoidable considering how important algorithms are in our everyday consumption of information. Students of a higher range will be able to appreciate the depths of conversation. They might get weirded out when they find out just how much information goes into this algorithm creation and how much information that they're giving. I do believe that the word that often came up in our focus groups was weird or creepy. Because there's a sort of parasocial relationship going on with these algorithms. And all of this is part of that lesson plan. I mean, there are probably a couple, but this is number one for me. If you teach nothing else from the digital, from MediaSmarts' website, this one will connect to literacy skills, will connect to interpersonal skills, will connect to digital media literacy as well. You can use it for reading for a group project. It's so vast and yet so well contained because of the learn by play model. Other than that, at this age, students really get to understand bias and crime in media. My experience in the classroom is that bias and crime is a very hot topic. Students love to talk about it because they are developing their sense at that age of social justice. And the meaning making behind social justice is filtered through what we see in media. Now, it doesn't address this specifically, but just the fact that Canadians are primarily American media consumers, which means even our understanding of crime and bias isn't even transparent to our Canadian reality, but to the American reality that we most consume. And this also touches on things like representation. So if there's ever a time to talk about representation, it would be in the higher grade levels, though really that is one of those wonderful subjects that's transversal. Um, Talking about Scar in The Lion King being defined by his physical deformity and being a bad guy at the same time kind of has us wondering what this, and this is like mild we could even say misrepresentation compared to some of the subjects that we can tackle later, such as the predominant cis white straightness still of actors that we see in the most popular TV shows. So anyways, that would be the other one. I'm trying to spot it here real quickly. Parents, it's not called representation. Oh no! Visible minorities. There we go. Yeah, so biased news versus miscast and seldom seen. That's the one I was thinking. And there's my co-host. So the whole "That's Not Me" section in diversity in media diversity does a great job of exploring that subject. We've had consultants come in to make sure that we are not also being blindsided by subjects that we might miss, given either the diversity limits on our team or quite simply the fact that there is enough of it that how do we possibly tackle every subject?
Great. Thanks so much for those suggestions. I'll definitely keep those in my back pocket. Because you get lots of requests, but you know it like the back of your hand. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
My pleasure. And going a little bit further, then we'll talk about Media Literacy Week because I do think that representation and all of that is a great opportunity to jump into Digital Citizen Day as the Wednesday of that Media Literacy Week, which is a day where we explore what it means to be a digital citizen. And after years of exploring the subject and thinking of how much in depth we can go, it comes out very simply to how to be kind online. It's incredible how often that is the subject that it comes right back to, not just for students, but for adults as well. This is what people want to talk about, is experiences and highlighting those experiences of kindness online, especially because, going back to those algorithms, what we will most see online is that which engages us the most, which is usually troubling or hateful content, because a hate click is still a click. Media Literacy Week as a whole will be highlighting events from all sorts of partners. We have, I'm looking for, there we go, the Media Literacy Toolkit, but there is a section, there's an entire teacher section as well that I want to, there we go, for educators. Where we are going to have more and more plug and play lessons every year as we keep producing them and recording them so that they can simply be played as a video or as a PowerPoint in the classroom. Ideas for what to teach. So if we're looking for those plug ideas that you were mentioning, here they are for for Media Literacy Week. Highlighting Digital Citizen Day, wacky media songs for K-3. If you have a chance, they are amazing. We don't have an equivalent in French. They were translated. They were original songs written for this very subject, and they are fabulous. Finally, with all of that comes the opportunity to be a teacher champion. This is not a shameless plug on our side, though I will say it's true. Teacher champions do help us a lot. Teacher champions get first access to a lot of our resources and get to comment on what works, what didn't, what the students liked, what they disliked, what they had trouble understanding in the lesson, what would have made more sense, what their recommendations might be. It's also a very limited communication format because I remember how little time we have to teach anything in a day. Never mind correct, and never mind get through the entire curriculum. So having a host of emails come in every week, never mind every day or whatever it might be a lot, but having recommended resources come out, some lesson plans, something fresh off the press that can be integrated, hopefully is more helpful than it is encumbering. So if ever we like the idea of teacher becoming teacher champions, where is that? It's not on our front page anymore. Anyways, we can always write to info@mediasmarts.ca, but there is a form that can be filled out for anybody who's interested in being a teacher champion. And if I don't find it quickly enough, I can link it by email afterwards. Or as Seth Meyers is fond of saying on his podcast, it's in the show notes, and it never shows up in the show notes. We are already coming up on almost 4:30. I'm amazed. Do we have any other questions? Anything else we wanted to tackle? I can go more in depth on our Media Literacy Week, but really my hope was to highlight it so that anybody who wants to check it out knows exactly where to find it. It's very subtle on our front page, on our homepage of mediasmarts.ca. A little hard to find, but
Look, I had a question. I mean, you alluded to it a little bit, but just with artificial intelligence and all of that, what it brings, it's a hot topic in education. Where does Media Smarts, like, what's being created, I guess, and what can we anticipate that would be coming out of Media Smarts dealing with artificial intelligence, I guess, is my question.
So right off the bat, I mentioned algorithms. It's important if we're going to understand artificial intelligence, we have to understand algorithmic functions. That is how they operate on a micro scale. But unfortunately, artificial intelligence operates on such a huge scale and under a black box model, which means that all that programming is proprietary, pardon me. So we know what it does without necessarily knowing how it gets there. That what we are faced with is a tool that we can engage with based on our own critical functions rather than its inherent functions. So, differently than social media, for example, where I can go change a whole bunch of settings, here I don't have that freedom. So, it has to happen first, the critical engagement with me. We do already have an existing lesson plan called Understanding Artificial Intelligence Tools. And this one, I think, gives us a quick understanding of artificial intelligence, how it operates, the scale on which it operates, and the bias that it finds, both because and despite that scale. Expected from Media Smarts, going forward, I have to say, and again, is this a tap on the shoulder? No, digital media literacy is a great way to engage with artificial intelligence, and we are going to be finding Media Smarts becoming a conversational leader in that area. What it's going to mean is not necessarily how to program artificial intelligence. We are not a tech-based sector. It's going to be how to engage with it. What are the ethics around it? How do I find sources? Which tools do I use for what purpose? And how do I navigate using that tool to help me perhaps achieve a better result while also showing my work, while not losing meaning negotiation? It's a lot. We're going to have to talk about the realities, the ethical considerations of authors' rights, musicians' rights, and in this sector, what it means for artists, for research, for the commodity of information, and that will have very serious impacts for any form of learning, but academics most of all. It's going to be a big conversation developing, but we can expect those to be some of the talking points that we'll be addressing.
That's great. Because, yeah, I mean, most of our kids in the youth sector aren't allowed to use these tools anyway. So the logical step is to talk about it. What's in the box? How does it determine things? Where, like all of those rich conversations, as you mentioned. So that's a great resource. I was just leafing through as you're talking. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. And that does bring up one last good point that I want to mention. I'm definitely not trying to take any sides on this subject, but on the matter of device use and schools. I know for a lot of provinces, the decisions have been made. So, what does this mean for educators? Um, well, I think that because when we talk about tech talk, we often refer to it as the talk. There's perhaps no better metaphor to talk about device use than sex education. What I mean by that is if, of course, the student receives no sex education, as has been demonstrated statistically throughout various countries for years now, up until a certain age, there are plenty of opportunities for plenty of things to happen before then. And sometimes it works out and sometimes it does not, but there's no way to necessarily know why. The same is true with technology. I'm not saying that we have to plug everybody in from kindergarten on, but exploring these digital media literacy tools is a great opportunity to make sure that there is a basis in critical thinking for when they do start using those devices, which they will at a fairly early age because it's parents that give them their devices long before they ask for them. And um, we want to make sure that they're using them safely and critically. Okay.
Awesome. That was great. Um, does anybody else have any other questions? So much stuff on there. It's
And,
amazing.
and they're beautiful resources. Like I've always been really attracted by how they're nicely presented as well. So for a teacher, I find it's really appealing. C'est clé en main. You had me at the moment you said you were proud of working for Media Smarts. Like that says it all. And then your walk through. So I hope everyone's feeling really inspired for Media Literacy Week because I know I am.
Yeah, totally. We'll plug Media Smarts big time through Learn our social medias, and Mark, I just want to thank you and Media Smarts for taking some time and sharing. Um, we're a small but mighty community, and we will make sure that the word gets out. So thank you.